What's up? What's up, everybody? How's it going? This is episode 48, and you're hanging out with Mike and Raf. As you'll see, still can't see me, but everybody, let's turn attention to this beautiful man sitting by his window in his high rise and looks like a Canadian, part of a Canadian tuxedo and a backwards hat. But he's not in Canada. He's way far south in Texas. Whereabouts there, Raf?
I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Austin.
Oh, Austin, Ohio. Oh, I thought you said
Yeah.
Austin, Texas. Oh, you see, he gets his directions up. He always says the Pacific Southeast. He just can't understand geography really well, but it's all right. We still love you. So,
Dude,
how's it
yeah,
going,
man.
dude?
I'm just chilling out here in Austin on a layover. Just hanging out, man. Just been all over this beautiful country. Was in JFK for a night, was in San Diego night before last. As a matter of fact, I hung out with our boy Nick Grossi. So
Yeah.
shout out to Nick.
What's up, Nick?
Went out, grabbed some dinner, had really good conversation. Like always, man, that dude's still crushing it. Selling solar and just massing some wins over there, man, stacking wins. So yeah, man, all is good.
That's good. I just want to point out that, it sounds very awesome what Raf does. He travels to all these really cool cities. I think he's going to Maui soon, San Diego, a couple of different spots. It's like, man, that'd be cool to travel and kind of see it. To let you know who Raf really is, we were texting about an hour ago and I was out grocery shopping and I was like, hey, dude, I'll be back in a bit. And he's like, yeah, I'm going for a walk. Raf was literally the guy standing under a bridge in Austin staring at bats. Like he was just the awkward dude pointing. There's no bats up there, but he's just sitting there pointing like a child, waiting for bats to come. And they didn't come apparently because the sun's still up. So he was very disappointed. So as much as he rips on me for like little shit, like if you ever see a random Mexican dude with a backwards hat and half Canadian tuxedo staring at under the bridge, it's probably Raf. So make sure you go up and say hi to him. Thank you for your service. And
Yeah, there's a good chance that is me. Also, Mike, can we talk about what you got at the grocery store and what's happening in your kitchen right now?
absolutely.
Can we talk about the inner fat kid that's on the other side of that lens?
Absolutely. I bought groceries for the week because I'm training, so I have to take my lunch with me because I can't stop. We don't really have a lunch break. You eat when you can, but I like to have an reward for myself. So I got a packet of Nestle cookie dough, and instead of a bunch of little ones, I made 6 giant chocolate chip cookies, and I like them like crispy on the outside and super gooey, so they fall apart on the inside. And then I like to have an ice cold glass of milk too after a long, hard day of getting my ass kicked. So yeah, call me a fat kid. That's totally fine. But I was going to offer you some, but now I'm just going to fucking eat them in front of you. And then you can sit there and, I don't know. What are you having? Like, what are you eating? Like 20 pieces of rice? What are you having?
20 pieces of rice. No, man. I went to the Velvet Taco just down the street.
The Velvet Taco?
Yeah, it's a real thing, dude. It's actually a pretty decent taco shop. Shout out to the Velvet Taco. If you guys are ever listening to our podcast, one, you're in the world of hurt. Two, shout out to you anyways, because that's awesome that you're listening to us. But yeah, they're off 6th Street. And our hotel is like a block away. So it's pretty ideal. But anyways, yeah, dude, I went for a walk as everybody should, got my 10,000 steps in. And so I went down by the water and I was waiting for the bats, but like we were talking about earlier, man, they're really inconsiderate because those sons of bitches weren't coming out. So I stood around for like 20 minutes and I was like, all right, dude, I'm over these bats. And I'm sure as soon as I walked away, they came out.
They knew you were there and they're like, no, we're not giving this dude our satisfaction.
Right.
That makes sense.
Racist bat. Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the topic because I know you have to go a little bit early, so this is going to be a shorter episode than usual. But as everybody kind of knows, if you've seen on our page, in this the other day I did a Instagram live for the first time and went on and answered questions, which is going to be a new thing that Raf Mellon and I are going to be doing once a week, usually probably on Saturday or Sunday, where we're going to open up and kind of take 30 minutes to an hour or whatever we can get in and have discussions about topics. It's your time to reach out to us, have Q&A. And it's really just a conversation about some stuff with the listeners instead of, having to talk just amongst ourselves. But we really appreciate like the live feedback and the comments that everybody's been sending in. Like it's been getting more and more. And one thing I'd like to do is just kind of throw a shout out to our new social media representative that we just brought into our team today, actually. Her name's Stephanie. She's redoing our entire Pushing Back Chaos on all platforms, all the different artwork, all the videos, the reels, the pictures. She's going to be doing everything and trying to expand, because honestly, it's very hard for Raf, Mellon, and I to maintain sometimes, because we're so busy. Like, as you see, Raf's always flying and traveling. I'm in the middle of my workup and training. Mellon's 7 hours ahead and doing what he does and on the other side of the world. So it's very hard for us to match up. Plus, these two have families and whatever else. It's hard. So we finally brought a great volunteer in to help us out. She straight up American, loves military, loves first responders, everything, loves the mission that we're doing. And you'll see her posting and adding some stuff in. So if you see that, just know that's our new person doing it. And we're very, very appreciative. So Stephanie's listening. Thank you very much for volunteering. And welcome to the team. Going on from that, with the Instagram Live, I talked about the topic of the month, which is mental health awareness, and kind of open up the Pandora's box on that with focus kind of on, just everyday struggles. I spoke a little bit about, what it's like just being a man in general, what it's like being in the military, and then being in a specific role where you volunteered or put yourself in a job or a role or position where you are exposed to massive amounts of stress or, violence or death or something that's just like not normally healthy for a normal human being, and having to deal with it and talk about it. We talked about the stigma, the stigma of like, nobody wants to talk about it. Women tend to be able to talk to each other differently than men in a more healthy way. Like, they're just kind of, that more feminine emotional side, and they're able to open up. I mean, let's be honest, Raf. I mean, we give some women 1 or 2 glasses of wine and like stuff's going to come out, right? Sometimes the benefit, sometimes not, but they're just kind of built that way, and it's more of a connection. Men, on the other hand, we tend to be more like brick walls, and when we're around each other, it's like, I'm not saying you have to one up each other, but there's always like this sense of competition, and like, I have to be the strongest. I can't show weakness. I don't want you to judge me. Everybody thinks I'm so great, or this person. So there's nothing I can show you that means that I'm nothing less than perfect, or less than how great I'm perceived, or how great I think I am. Right. And then we just bottle it up, compartmentalizing, and bury that sucker until one day something triggers it, or it's just becomes too much, and it comes, it explodes out of you in a rage that you can't control, and you're just along for the ride. So we kind of covered those things. And, I mentioned that Raf and Mellon have been there for me when I've struggled, and, just being present and listening to me, giving me a hug, sharing their own stories or whatever. It just makes things better, unless you know that you're not alone, that other people are going through stuff too. Kind of brings you back down to earth, shows you reality. And it's just such a good process, that you go through when you have great people in your life. So I kind of covered that, but, Raf, I'll turn it over to you, man, and kind of your initial thoughts on Mental Health Awareness Month. I like that they do a month to it, but I think it should be like really a year-long practice, and with one of solutions. And I think we can maybe talk about some solutions too that can defeat that stigma as well. But what are your thoughts on Mental Health Awareness Month?
Well, first, I think you have a valid point. I think instead of doing like 1 month a year, I think the focus should be like, this is such an important, I would go as far as saying it's an epidemic in our country, Western society, that I think it's valid to consider doing something we can check into periodically, whether it's every month, every other month, but just something that where it's a continual, we're building on it, right? We're always talking about it, because I do think that, I don't know, man, just from seeing our society kind of deteriorate a little bit, I just think the mental health it's not something that's hidden anymore. I think it's very overt. I think it's very much in our faces. But I think the symptoms are what we're kind of hiding. And so we're allowing these symptoms to fester, and, in these dark, alone places that we find ourselves. And then by the time we open up, it might be a little too late. We might already done some damage, whether it's to ourselves or, God forbid, to our families, whether it's through, isolating ourselves from them, that sort of thing. So anyways, I think you nailed it. I think that's something that's important enough, and it should be important enough that maybe something we should touch on pretty regularly, because it's a real issue in our country. It doesn't matter if you're, uber successful, or, you're one of the homeless people in the street corner of the city that you live in, smoking crack, right? There's mental health issue it's a broad spectrum, but it's not like it's prejudiced to anything. It's right. If you're human, you're going to be exposed to it. So anyways, so I've been reading this, but I'm actually going to give another plug. Again, if he ever listens to our podcast, that would be awesome. His name is Dr. Peter Attia. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of times, and he just recently wrote a book called Longevity, the Art and Science of, it's called Outlive, and it's the science and art of longevity. And in it, I literally just finished the book, but I'm so motivated by it that I'm going to go back and reread it again. So I read it in about 3 days. I just couldn't put it down. Anyways, in it, there's a chapter where he talks about mental health. And the reason it stunned me was because if you know anything about Dr. Attia, he is literally, I would say, like the top 1% performing human. This dude's a former oncologist, has a math degree from I forgot what university, but it's like a Ivy League school, I think Stanford maybe, was, he's like into math analytics. And now he's kind of focused his energies into lifespan and longevity. Well, in this chapter, he opens up the chapter on health span as being one of the pillars of a healthy long life, right? An effective long life. And he shared some personal anecdote. He shared some personal stories that completely blew my mind, because I didn't expect someone at his, I would say, pedigree, that he kind of built, to have these internal struggles. And that just solidified what I just said. Everybody can have these issues. And he names one of the therapists that he's working with. His name was Jeff English. And he basically, he kind of surmised, or he just kind of defined what mental health, specifically trauma, right? Because when we talk about mental health, we're dealing with some negative aspect in our life, something that happened in our past. Maybe it's currently happening in our present. And so the perception is that's going to continue to happen in the future. We're going to carry that with us. And I'm just going to read right from the book. And it says, there's the big T and little t. There's giant traumas, like a rape. Maybe you witnessed a murder. Maybe you almost got murdered. And then there's little traumas. And that's something like, maybe take my son, for instance, Soren. Let's say he's in the room and I completely just lose my shit. That can be traumatic to him. You know what I mean? Because he's a helpless little dude. He's 4 years old. And what might just seem like me releasing something verbally, to him, I'm his entire world. Right. So just it's important to kind of have that distinction, that there's big traumas, little trauma, but collectively, little traumas can add up to a big trauma, especially if it's, if you have a raging alcoholic of a father, or maybe you've got an abusive mother, or maybe an abusive uncle, or that sort of thing. All these little incidents will add up. But more importantly, it means that especially for men. And now he's talking about why men have such a hard time dealing and expressing the struggle with overcoming trauma, and kind of spinning down this dark alley of mental health. And it's because it's experiencing those moments of basically perceived helplessness, right? You take a child who's beaten as a young kid, or I'll take you, Mike, for instance, someone who loses a significant male role model like your father at such a young age, where you're kind of looking for answers, and the man that's supposed to give you the answers isn't there all of a sudden. I would say that's pretty traumatic, right? And so that I'm sure that you compensated, because everyone compensates differently. Like some people, some people fall to addiction. You fell to saying, shit, I'm going to make something of myself to make him proud. But there's no doubt in my mind that there was moments where you probably felt like you were powerless, because you didn't have that hero, that person to kind of watch over you, tell you what to do, what to steer away from, that sort of thing. But I thought that was a really good example of describing, really at the core, especially for men, at the core, it's like that perception of helplessness, which is the last thing you want to feel. I mean, think about it, Mike. Like if you and I were back in Afghanistan and we were found ourselves in a situation where, you know, the weakest part of a Black Hawk, or the most vulnerable part of a Black Hawk, is literally seconds before landing and seconds before takeoff.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got hit during that time and you're on board, you and I both know we're going to feel completely helpless. I mean, you at least have the opportunity to like shoot out the side, you know, like open the cabin door and start firing away. But I'm just sitting there, you know, trying to move this fat pig and get it into the air. And for those seconds, it's just going to be sheer terror. No matter how confident and how skilled and all this other crap, make no mistake about it, there's going to be complete terror inside of me. And it's because that perception of helplessness. And so when you peel it all back, that's really what trauma is. It's those moments of, I have no control over what's happening to me, which is why, if you think about rape, why it's so insidious. It's because these women, and even men that get molested, raped, or whatever, they have no control over the action that's being actioned upon them. I mean, there's nothing, can anyone think of a worse feeling than that? Probably, you know what I mean? It's just, so I really like the way they covered this piece, and he shared some, like I said, personal stories that really struck me, especially from coming from someone who I would consider is definitely part of like the 1% of humanity, just high achieving, high emotional IQ, go-getter, just all that stuff. And he struggles, right? And like a lifelong struggle. And he's just now kind of come to grips, you know, at the time of this book. And that kind of opened up some thoughts within myself. You know, I have trauma from my childhood. I don't ever openly speak about it, but there are moments where I know that the things that I decided to do were because of significant events that happened when I was a young kid. And so I think it's important to, again, it's a big sphere. It's a big, there's like a wide spectrum of mental health. Like we can relate it to, you know, stuff that veterans deal with back in Afghanistan, back in Iraq, back in Africa, you know, in the line of duty, police officers, nurses, the things that they see, you know, childhood trauma, maybe you have an abusive spouse. So there's different like themes or textures to it. But I think at the core of it, I would agree, and I think most people would agree, that what they describe in this book, what Peter Attia describes in this book, is pretty fucking spot on. Like it's that feeling of, like, everybody hates to have that feeling of helplessness. And so for men, it's really tricky to try to open up and say, you know what, I had this moment of vulnerability. And the reason they say it's perceived, it's because the reality is, you know, and I hate to go down this dark road, but you think about a child who was molested, the perception is that kid was helpless, and to a degree that child was. But listen, that child is going through, you know, a phase in life where he's a child or she's a child. And so, you know, they're not equipped yet to defend themselves. So in the reality, of course you were helpless. Like it wasn't your job to defend yourself. It was the adult's job to not be a total piece of shit. I mean, like, that's why they make the distinction with the perception. Like the perception, that's what eats people away. Like I should have done more, and I didn't, and I was vulnerable or whatever. But dude, if you're a kid, that's not your job. That's my job. That's Mike's job. That's Melon's job.
Yeah.
To, you know, to make sure that doesn't happen to the children in our lives, whether they're my blood children or just my neighbor's kids or whatever, you know. So I really like that distinction, and I really like the way they defined it. So anyways, that's kind of my thought on the mental health issue. And I thought the fact that we're talking about it and reading this book, and literally I just finished this chapter a couple of days ago, it's still kind of fresh in my head. I thought it was kind of appropriate.
No, great points, Raf. There's two things that you said that I just read recently and kind of heard recently. So I listened to a guy, it was a Peter Attia, you said. Well, I listened to this guy, I don't want to mess his name up, but Dr. Gaber Mate, I want to say his name is. He's a doctor who was an infant and a prisoner within Nazi Germany. He was in a concentration camp as an infant. And he speaks on trauma a lot. If you go to YouTube and look him up, Gabormate, with a little hyphen in there. He speaks on trauma a lot. And one of the things he said, you know, is childhood trauma. So he goes, you know, hey, from a very young age as an infant, you know, I was born into a world where I wasn't good enough. Like I was imprinted with the feelings of I'm not good enough because I'm Jewish and therefore I should be exterminated or, you know, killed off. So he's like, I literally spent half of my life growing up and exhausting myself to prove that I am worthy to have a life, to be loved, to be appreciated. Because ever since I was cast out and proven that I wasn't worthy enough, deserving enough of something, which in that case was his life and being a human being, he goes, I overworked myself my entire life. I was nice to everybody because I never wanted to be angry with somebody for someone to not like me. And it affected how I thought my whole life because of what happened as a child. So I was constantly nice to everybody. I was never mean to anybody. I never wanted to release those healthy anger outbursts to relieve that stress. And he's like, what I found through my research is that unhealthy and trauma that has come from stuff like that, that's not dealt with, is directly related to a lot of diseases that people develop. So there's cardiovascular diseases. There's, obviously like mental health. There's strokes. There's high blood pressure. There like your chances of getting cancer is bigger. Like your body. So like these people are dying at like 50, 60 years old because they're so overstressed from trying to hold everything together and hold in. Their nervous system takes a hit. Like literally everything. And I listened to one of his speeches talking about it, and honestly, I kind of related to it. Like, and it was the thing. I sent it. I don't know if I sent it to you. I sent it to Tony Senior. I sent it to Mellon, and he messaged me, and I was talking about it. And it was just kind of that thing of just like, if you've ever tried for something, whether it's a job and you didn't make it, and it's like your dream. If there was a relationship that you wanted so bad and they just like cast you aside and it's like you never existed, and you're going to feel like a worthless piece of shit. You're going to be like, I'm not worth it. I guess I don't deserve it. I'm not a good human being. And you go there, and I've honestly been there. I've honestly felt like, well, obviously I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving of love. I'm not deserving of this opportunity. I'm not deserving of whatever. And it was just like this fire that lit into me. And it's like, well, I'm going to go off and I'm going to be the best goddamn version of myself. And I'm going to show everybody that I am worth it. And this sucks to say, dude, but it's true. I feel like exhausted after trying to do that for a few years now. Like trying to show the people that like didn't want me, like it's the whole thing. Like you fucked up. Like I am worth it. I'm an amazing human being. Look at all that I'm accomplishing. Look at the growth I've had. Look at what I've done. Look at who I've helped. Like just everything across my life is just elevated. And it's like hitting the NOS button sometimes where I'm going so hard and I'm accomplishing so much, and my focus and my energy is at the high level, especially with my job, right? But then, dude, at the end of the day, like I'm so exhausted and it's still like I'm not satisfied. And that brings a layer of stress to me because my challenge for me is trying to find satisfaction, like trying to find a level where I can stop and go, dude, I'm doing really good, and celebrate it. Like I can't, like, and recently I did like a thing, and it could be a little thing for me or whatever, but I went out and traded my old my old Betsy truck in, my old pickup truck in, and I got myself a next size up, and I got myself a new Tundra, and the thing's like a spaceship compared to my old truck, and it's awesome. I love driving it, but it was like a gift to myself. Like all this hard work, I haven't had a new car in 12 years, and it was like, man, I've been working really hard. Look at what I've been through. I've really worked my ass off in all aspects of my life. I'm really trying hard. I want to celebrate. I need to stop and just be like, man, I'm doing good. And it was like, I'm going to go get myself a new truck and treat myself. And honestly, it was like a mental health, like little pick me up, like, man, I earned this. I really worked hard for this. Like, this is a good thing. I'm grateful I have the opportunity. I'm grateful I have the funds. I'm grateful I have the means to go out and buy a brand new truck. You know what I mean? Like, this is good. But that struggle there that the doctor talked about, man, I was like, man, that's really connecting. And then the second part you talked about, Raf, is, you're talking about like you get into these stressful situations that happen that you can't control, whether we're taking off or when you're landing in the helicopter and it's like, oh shit, dude, we're kind of just along for the ride. And oh my God. And it's insurmountable pressure. Well, that's why we're talking about this, is because the thing that separates, and I'm just talking in general here, if you were to put a normal person, general population, in a helicopter and put them in that situation, they'd probably freak the hell out, be back there crying, like, oh my God, freaking out, right? The thing that separates people like Raf and I is that we have trained for those situations. This is no different. If there are stresses and things that really hurt you, that hurt your mental state, that have really bothered you in your life and anything else, you need to train to face it, right? You can't just hide from it all the time. Like, I get it. Burying that stuff, it's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want that side to come out. I don't want to talk about that. Every time I talk about it, I break down, I cry, and it's like I'm reliving it all over again. Yeah. And that's what professionals are for. You know what I mean? I'm not a professional. Raf's not one. Melon's not one. We're not psychiatrists. We're not anything. But through personal experience, it's like, man, I need to let those demons out, and I need to speak about them, and then figure out how I can train myself to be more prepared for when it does come back around, or when I do get in that situation and it's like overly stressed and everything's, just the meter is tanking so high. It's like, man, all right, I trained for this, muscle memory might take over with some stuff. And it's like, yeah, I've prepared for this. I'm going to be okay. That's the difference between worrying and avoiding versus admitting and preparing. I think that's the difference with a lot of stuff. And, over the last couple of years for myself, having these conversations on this show, being great friends with Raf and Melon and a few other guys, I've been training. Like, to me, this is a conversation, but this is training. Talking about it, normalizing it, being open. Well, dude, I failed at this. I don't know how to heal that or handle this. What did you do? What can I do different? How can I do this different? Because I know you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, this is training yourself, training your brain, training your physiological reactions to stresses that happen when you acknowledge that they exist, and then acknowledging that, hey, I'm not where I need to be to face them. I think that's a huge part.
Yeah, and that's why on previous episodes we talked about the importance of everybody, not just men, but obviously we talked about it from a man's point of view. That's why it's really important to choose the men and women that are in your inner circle. Don't choose them for superficial reasons because they have the right amount of money or the homes or just all that glamour and pizzazz, because really at the end of the day that doesn't mean anything, right? The currency is going to be when you're in your shittiest day. I know that I can pick up the phone, whether it's you, whether it's Melon, whether it's Matt, Joel, just there's a solid group of friends that I could call at any time, any day, and be like, dude, I'm having one of the worst days of my life. And without a doubt, the names I just named off would be like, I'm on my way,
Yeah.
And again, I could, each of those names I just named off, even Elliot, everyone's got a different profession. Like, that's, it's not a current, I don't care what you do. I don't care how much you make. I don't care what you drive. I don't care if you have any Tundra. It's the least of my worries. It's the person. So yeah, take that or heed that as advice. And then you kind of, if I just build on what you just talked about, it is important to kind of build, I think Malin said it best, where he says you want to, learn to stress yourself by doing hard things, right? Because you're basically raising the tide so that when traumatic things happen or something that's really difficult happens, you've already kind of, you've got a baseline that is already there to kind of hopefully deal with most things. But like anything else, there might be something that you're not prepared for. And it's okay to sit there and say that you're not prepared for it. It really is okay. It's okay to, take a knee and cry or make a phone call or just don't do anything. Just sit back, get on your knees and pray and meditate, or if you want to meditate, and then seek guidance from people that you trust, or whatever. But just the key of it though is you don't want to go at it alone. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and I also think it's one of the deadliest things when we talk about veterans that commit suicide, is they feel like they're all alone. And that's the furthest thing from the truth, because we all know that if that veteran picks up that phone and just calls a friend, any one of us, we'd be like, the first thing I'd say is like, man, I love you. And if you're talking about doing what you think you're going to do, don't do it. Like, just don't do it, because you're worth more to us alive and intact and than being at your funeral. Like, that doesn't serve anybody any purpose. And I know that we would all, something along those lines, we would tell them like, dude, you bring so much value to everybody in your life. Like, I know you don't see it, but just trust me when I tell you, like, you are fucking where you need to be. You're in a struggle, and we're gonna help you out of this. But anyways, I think it's insidious, right? Because you think, well, no one knows my pain. I'm in this by myself. And it's dude, listen, we're like 7.3 billion or whatever billion people on this earth, and we all live this world like we're individuals. But the truth is, we're kind of in this shit together. Like, we're all, I guarantee there's other Raf Espinosas that are going through very similar things, but in our little monkey brain, we just think it's just us, and even more so for men, we like to isolate ourselves because you don't want to manifest our weakness to the world. We don't want to show people that I'm weak. And I was addicted to pornography. Like, oh, God forbid, Raf was addicted to pornography. Like, what a turd. Yeah, I was a turd, man. Doesn't mean that Raf the person is a turd. It means that I was doing some turd things, but at least I acknowledged them and said, you know what? I can't go down this road. Yeah. I have to fight this fucking demon. And that's everybody, so some people it's food, and they lose control of their body and their body mechanics. And then for other people, they can't hold their anger back, and they're having, they're just losing their minds, and they're screaming and they're shouting, and unfortunately might be in front of kids. And now, that's kind of going, now it's transgenerational, right? Now you're passing that trauma over to like the next generation, which is the last thing you want to do. I mean, if you're a decent human being, you don't want to do that. But yeah, I just kind of building on what you said. I think that's something to point out.
Well, we're definitely not alone, because, pulling up statistics right now for 2023 alone, more than 50 million Americans are currently struggling with mental illness. 1 in 5 young people ages 13 to 18 has or will develop a mental illness in their lifetime. Youth depression rates have risen from 12.9% to 25.2% from pre-pandemic to 2021, currently to 2023. Most Americans lack access to adequate mental health treatment. 54.7% of American adults with mental illness did not receive care in the last year. Half of all mental illnesses show early signs before a person turns 14 years old, and 3/4 of mental illnesses begin before the age of 24. And more than 1 in 4 adults living with serious mental illness also struggles with substance abuse. That was the one thing that the doctor I mentioned, Gabriel Mate, talked about is, when we have these traumas and these mental illnesses, and we don't have access, we don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the confidence. We worry too much that if we admit that we're struggling, that we're going to lose our job, that we're going to have our children taken away, that something's going to negatively impact our life and our family, and our whole life's going to come crumbling down. That's just fear. That's a major fear. I know I talked on the military on our Instagram live thing was, the number one fear of military members is that if I go to counseling or I admit that I'm having mental health issues, they're going to fire me. They're going to pull me out of my position. They're going to ground me from flying. They're going to do whatever. And they're going to ruin my career, and I'll never recover because everybody think I'm like this head case. It's like, no, dude, that's not the truth. Like there is so many things involved now within counseling. And I only know this because I've gone and I've experienced it and lived it. I've asked all the hard questions. I've been worried that my career that I worked so hard for was going to get shot down the drain, that I was worried I was going to get medically retired from the military because of stuff that I've been through. Like, I get it. And I asked the hard questions, and I went and found it out for myself in person. These things are in place to save you. And there are good, decent human beings that are there to help our active duty veteran, our active duty military, our veterans, our LEOs, our first responders, general population. The problem with it right now is the quality and the time, because so many people have gone into depression and have mental illnesses, especially the last couple of years post-COVID, because a lot of people during that, you know, the lockdown and everything else, lots of people lost people. They lost their jobs. They lost their sense of purpose. They couldn't go outside. They got overweight. Like, that's a huge one. And when you're in these stresses, what the doctor talked about, he's like, you find coping mechanisms. Most of the time, they're not healthy. Like, people that like go and work out, that's cool. Like, that's a healthy one. Hey, I'm depressed. Go and work out. You'll feel better about yourself. It, like, biologically is wonderful for your body and your reaction and your system. But what's free, what doesn't take a lot of effort, or what costs very little and is highly accessible? Alcohol, drugs, pornography. Men will use women to feel good about themselves temporarily, like to get that adrenaline rush. Women will use men. Yeah, women will use men and vice versa. Social media. Hey, I feel like shit today, so I'm going to post a nice picture of my, you know, my ass and titties and my Pomeranian puppies or whatever that makes me look like this stripper or like whatever, and I'm going to post it so everybody just drools over me, and I'll temporarily feel good about myself. But then guess what? I wake up tomorrow and the feeling's still there. So what do? Well, I guess I'll do it again. And that's how addictions start. And he goes into very well, very well, like very detailed discussion about coping mechanisms and addictions and how it really eventually leads to diseases and mental health disorders, and that are, you know, almost permanent. And it just makes you think, man, of just like, okay, well, what are some other ways? And we can get into this real quick to kind of end the show, but what are some other ways, solutions that we can do and pursue to beat that stigma and to not fall down the rabbit hole like you talked about, Raf, like your struggle with pornography? It was like, yeah, dude, I was addicted to porn. Like, how did you get out of it? What was the changes? Like, what are some other positive things that we can pursue to better ourselves and pull ourselves out of that hole, instead of reverting to the easy, accessible shit that's, it's like eating fast food, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's fast, it's easy, it's cheap, I'll go eat it, but none of it's good for you. All right. And it's going to make you a fat, lazy piece of shit with heart problems if you keep eating it. It's the same with all this other stuff. So what are some things that you think could be regularized, or is that a word? Regularized or normalized?
It is for you. It is for you.
It is for me. Yeah. Yeah. It's a Bushism, but what could be normalized in
strategery?
Yeah. Strategery.
Yeah.
What could be normalized at work, in our society, in our friends groups, in our families? Like, what are some things we do?
So I think so that's a great question. And because I know we're trying to wrap it up, because we're trying to keep this one short. I would start with, and this is my own opinion, I'm not a therapist, I'm not Dr. Aaron, I'm not that good looking, I'm also not that smart. I would start with peeling out the things that aren't good. Like, honestly, like, you start with, I don't know if you ever follow, or if you know a guy named Jeff Cavalier. He's got Athlete Next. It's a big workout athletic organization. He's always putting out free content on YouTube, and I've been following this dude for like a decade and a half. But there's something that he said probably a year ago that I was watching on his videos, and it resonated. And he said, people always talk about all these biohacks to get stronger, to get a bigger chest, to do this, to do that. And he's like, and he's not saying that doing those things aren't going to get you there. He's like, but you should always start, when you're going to go into this journey of trying to get fitter, stronger, better physique. You start off with getting rid of the stuff that's not good for you, the stuff that's actually holding you back, right? And is impeding your progress in that direction, because squatting is going to give you a stronger squat. But if you're not, if there's something else that, that you're not doing, like maybe you've got a weak core, maybe you don't have the mobility in your ankles, you're going to get a strong squat, but you're also going to start, effing up your spine and jacking up your hips and all this other stuff. So anyways, he's like, stop eating sugar, stop eating bullshit, stop drinking, before you go into this journey of like self-improvement, start with peeling back the stuff you don't need. And so I would say, in terms of like more specifically for me, like with the pornography thing, I had to kind of start with peeling back the things that are holding me back. And one of them was, because it's a cycle that just goes, it's a perpetual cycle where like, whatever my reasons were, I had this distance, the sense of distance, because, by this time I was on my second deployment. So I'd already 2 full years plus workup cycles away from my wife. So we've already kind of grown apart in that regard. So there's this distance, both mental and physical. And so first I had to get rid of the idea that we were separated, right? Because in my mind, it's like, well, she's 1,000 miles away and I'm here and we barely talk on the phone. So what's it matter? Right? As soon as you say that, what's it matter?
Yep.
The devil's got you by the nuts.
Yep.
So I started with that. It's like, I did what I could, and it wasn't overnight. It literally took me months, if not damn near a year, to get rid of that thought out of my head. And it doesn't matter that I was far away. I would look at pictures of her. I would kind of regenerate memories of her, because I'm not trying to be corny here, but one of the greatest sounds on earth for me is her laughing. I love her laugh. Like every time she laughs, it literally puts me on a fucking cloud. Like her laughs to me are super contagious. And so I would deliberately think of moments where I said something or did something and she would laugh. And that helped me kind of build that bridge where I felt like a connection, even though she was thousands of miles away or wherever she was. I felt the connection, you know what I mean? And again, it was all in my head, but it helped. So I would start with that. And then obviously I wanted to create a path, and I wanted to create there was a path that I was wanting to take. And so I had to create this image of what I was going to look like, or what I was going to feel like, and who I was going to be. And so that kind of helped me give, I don't know if this makes sense, but that kind of gave me direction. Like I knew, like, okay, if Stoic Raf is someone who doesn't look at porn, who doesn't, speak ill will of people, who doesn't, do list of things. Well, what are the actions that will get me there? And, as simple as it sounds, I started by doing really hard shit. Like I started, at the time I was trying out for selection, and I was having these long rucks. I mean, long rucks, like, 15, 20 miles, different types of environment. And in those times of like pain, there was also a lot of peace. And in that peace is where I would, like, I was kind of building my self-worth, like just kind of saying, you could do this. You could be that person you want to be. Like as a matter of fact, every step you take forward, you're getting closer to that person. And then again, going back to the spirit of peeling shit back, let's be honest, man, all the variables for a fucked up life they're all over us, right? The proliferation of pornography. I mean, it's literally, there was a comedian who said like porn is literally just hovering in the earth. It's like all over the sky, and it's just basically as soon as you press the button, it just gets sucked into your phone. He's like, yeah, you don't see it, but if you look up, there's just like porn everywhere. But he did it really funny the way he said it. There's also social media. You talk about the isolation piece, COVID. Also pre-COVID, we're kind of heading in that direction, but I think COVID was the accelerant that people needed to really be isolated. And then they got codependent to their devices, right? And now it's like more normal to text somebody versus just call and be like, hey man, just want to hear your voice. Like it's almost awkward if somebody calls before they text. And I hate that I feel weird about that sometimes. I'm like, what text?
Dude, real quick, there's literally people that if you go to call them, they hang up immediately. They're like, that's weird. Like, don't call me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Are you like, what's wrong? And they're like, I don't talk on the phone. I only text. I'm like,
yeah,
that's a problem.
Right.
That's more common now. Like that's scary, but yeah, dude, go ahead.
Yeah. So that destroys obviously real connections with people, because you need to be in the room with that person to really build a relationship, to like, have the eye contact, squaring your shoulders, laughing together, crying together, whatever, man. Like there's something very powerful, something very innate about being in the room with somebody at least once or as many times as possible versus just, texting or whatever. The other one is like, I'm just going to be honest, man, it's obesity. That's the other epidemic. Like there's so much like metabolic disease that leads to cardiovascular disease, that leads to, neuropathy, that leads to fucking type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, like just the list goes on and on and on. But it starts with obesity. And obesity is something that's completely preventable, you know, like just eat less than what you need. So if you need 2,600 calories, eat 24, 25, track your macros. It's not the greatest thing, but you need to understand that, like, right now, the way the food industry is designed, and I'm not trying to demonize the food industry, but just the way they're designed, you know, the way we were built for survival by, you know, build, and I'm not going to get into that, but just there's plenty of books on it, but, you know, we're designed for like we're designed to live in harsh environments. That's literally how our bodies were created. So we were designed to hold so much sugar in our blood system, and the rest would go straight through the liver or whichever organ, and then it turns it into adipose tissue, right? So it basically stores energy through fat, because fat as an energy source is like 50 times, it holds like 15 times more energy or something like that, whatever the numbers are. But the food that we eat now is not like it was a couple thousand years ago, right? It's super refined, fructose, sucrose, all the other fancy, you know, words. And so our body doesn't really know what to do with it. So it's like, almost, if you stop and look, almost everything you eat has some level of sugar. So you're just inundating your body with sugar. And so eventually a lot of us become insulin resistant. And then next thing you know, you start to get lethargic. And when you get lethargic, you lose energy and motivation. And now I'm like, fuck, now I got no motivation. So as soon as I go from work, I'm tired. I don't want to work out. I'm going to go sit on the couch. You know what? I've had a long day. I'm going to have a beer. Well, fucking alcohol is the worst thing you could do, especially if you're out of shape. And it's just this vicious cycle, just like pornography, man. Once it gets the claws on you, fuck, man, before you know it, you've put on 40 pounds, you know? Yeah. And so obesity is and if people think it's not a national security issue, you're insane. Listen to all the proponents out there telling you right now that the military is having a hard time recruiting. One of them, I think, really has to do with the mindset of the nation, but the other is just physically, kids aren't fit. Like, they're just not. I remember seeing a picture of kids in their 50s. Dude, these dudes look like men. And then they compared to like kids today in like the late 2000s or, you know, 20,000s or whatever. It's like, it was just crazy. It was like this little Antifa kid. And then you've got this dude who was like just chiseled out, you know, doing pull-ups. But yeah, man, I think that's the other, I think obesity, you really have to consider that a threat. If you stand in the mirror and you don't feel confident in your body, then you really should take some action and do something about it. Because, you know, you could buy a Corvette, you could buy a Mercedes, you could buy all these, you could have all the money in the world, but if you're not comfortable in your body, none of those things matter. None of those things matter, right? I think the best thing you can do for yourself is being able to stand in front of the mirror, butt ass naked, and be like, I'm proud of that body. I worked for that body. Yeah. That body's strong. It's not the strongest, but it's strong, and it's able to do some shit, and it can get me out of a fire, and it can run down the, you know, whatever your body can do, you know, you want to be proud of it. And so put in the work. But anyways, I'm off the soapbox because I wouldn't want to be here all night, but yeah.
No, all great points, Rav. I really agree with you about the physicality thing, and, you know, building your temple, right? And it's just like, take care of it, because you only get one. And if you're not feeding it and giving it nutrition and workouts and like everything else like that, of course it's gonna degrade, and it's gonna give you problems. You're gonna have a shitty time. You're gonna be fighting health problems instead of focusing on like, what am I gonna do today? Can I go to the park and then just enjoy this nice weather? No, because I'm out of shape and I have heart problems now, or, you know, like whatever. Yeah. So, or I can't walk right, you know, whatever. I have knee problems because I'm so heavy. You know, yeah, there's all kinds of different stuff that's definitely going. So physical fitness is definitely a physiological fitness. Yeah, for sure. My points to wrap this up would be, I talked about on the live portion, but leaders need to lead, and not just in any community, but in my opinion, this country, leaders need to lead, and we need to practice empathy and sympathy more while leading. So we need to put in I believe we need to put in the work. Like, you can't talk to me if you're not doing it. Like that's with anything, right? If you know, I'm not getting on heavy people, but like if a fat person's up in front of you and they're like, you need to hurry up and work out and you need to do this, you know, it's like watching a football coach. There was a football coach with the Cleveland Browns a couple of years ago, and literally he'd be like, hut. And like every time he said hut, his belly would literally like jump, like there was an animal in it. And he's yelling at these like world-class athletes of like, you need to be faster, hurry up, hut, 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 hut. And it was funny as hell that people made like into a funny video. But it's like, dude, you're losing all accountability. I'm not going to listen to you. Like, look at yourself, dude. How can you preach to me if you're not even doing it? Like, at least show me some effort that you're doing it. So in that case, leaders need to lead. You need to be out there. You need to, again, we're not going to be perfect, but you need to be out there. You need to be in shape. You need to be speaking and making things regularly talked about. Normalize it, right? Beat the stigma. Like, dude, I talked about it. I'll go into work like once a month, maybe a little bit, maybe twice, depending on what we're doing. And I walk in and I just, hey, how's everybody doing, man? Is everybody stressed the hell out? Like these are some long days. We're working 20-hour days. We're doing this, we're doing that. How's everybody feeling? Like, no shit. And then before anybody even answers, I put out how I'm feeling. And I'm honest. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm freaking exhausted. Like, I didn't sleep well. I don't feel like 100% recharged over the weekend that we got off, like, dude, I'm freaking tanked, and plus I'm dealing with this. Like I have, I had to move. I got a new truck. I had to go over here. I had to switch bills. I had to do all this other shit. I'm like, I'm stressed out. Like, does anybody else feel like that? And then dudes look at me and they're like, oh yeah, man. Like, yeah, I'm feeling it too. And then it's like, the leaders have to lead. You're not going to get vulnerability unless you give vulnerability. And I talk about that. Normalize the stresses so that it's okay in the space and you set the environment for that stuff to be talked about. And once people feel that, hey, I can come out and talk about what I'm dealing with, dude, that's half the battle, right? Because now you just truly connected with another human being. You're not connecting jobs or positions. You're connecting as human beings and it's saying, hey, I'm here for you. I care for you. Like, dude, just let it out. Like, I'm not going to judge you because I'm going through the same thing. That's sympathy. That's empathy. We're lacking that as a culture and in society. I think we're either taught, hey, grind away, be this hard son of a bitch, and don't be a snowflake, right? And then the other side's going, don't be a toxic masculinity male and be a soft male. Don't be violent, love and peace and everything else. And it's like one extreme or the other. And again, it's like, man, no wonder like we're depressed, because if you're so toxic, you have no connection to like a woman or children necessarily, because you don't know how to turn that shit off. And that's a mental problem. Or if you're so soft that you don't know how to, like, you're not hard, you don't know how to defend yourself, or you can't defend a woman or children or anything else, that's a mental problem. That's going to fuck with you either way, right? So understanding that your role and responsibility and redefining who you are in this path, like Raf said, like he wanted to see what stoic Raf looked like. Well, this dude's in shape. This guy's got his mind together. He knows what his values are. He knows who he's supposed to be for his wife, for his child, all these different things. That's what we need to realize. And then leaders need to take the forefront and fucking lead. Like, don't be the guy that's in crazy shape with a six-pack trying to like speak on a soapbox. And then you look at all these other people who are way down below you that aren't in shape, that are overweight. And you're like, y'all are pieces of shit, man. And you're just fucking lazy. It's just like, dude, that's not a leader. You're standing on your soapbox saying how great you are. Like, why don't you shut your arrogant mouth and get down there and grab these people and say, hey, come with me. I will show you the way, and actually put the time and effort in to lead the people that you care about. How about you try that once? No, because that's hard. I don't give a shit. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to be for the people that are struggling. Because guess what? No one else is going to do it. No one but you. And you need to act like, and the last thing I really like, just a mental aspect about life. Pittsburgh Steelers, former Steelers, James Harrison, he was a linebacker for the Steelers. 2-time Super Bowl champion, just a phenomenal animal on the field. But he spoke about this from Coach Dick LeBeau, who was a Hall of Fame defensive coach for the Steelers. He said, I want you to prepare, train, and play as if the entire game was on your shoulders. Every single one of those players on there. And dude, if you looked at those teams like 2008, 2010, with the amount of talent that were on the Steelers defense in particular, it was insane, the type of people they had on there. And every one of them bought into that of being, hey, this entire game rests on your shoulders alone to get us where we want to go as a team, as a culture, in a direction to win Super Bowls, right? Everybody bought in. Can you imagine what one person would be like if they acted like, I need to get out of this and hone my mental abilities, release my struggles and really carve myself into the person that I'm supposed to be and that I want to be. One person, now take 11 people on a defense that are all firing on all the same cylinders and that are communicating and wide open about every aspect of their life. That's a dangerous team, right? Think about that with your family. What if your family was able to do that? What if your friend circle was able to do that? What if your teammates and colleagues and coworkers at work were able to do that? Imagine what you'd be able to accomplish if you had a leader that can instill that mentality into you and your team. That's what we're lacking. That's my opinion. Leaders, get out and lead your people and do the work. Do the work and lead them through it. Not stand on your soapbox and show them where to go. Do it with them, be leaders, and help people that are struggling become something better. So I'll leave it there because I'm getting a little passionate.
Well, if I could just add something before you close out, just to add to what you're saying about the community. It's not just important because we're saying it's important. There was a study done on centenarians, right? So people that lived to 100 and beyond. And one of the most significant variables that centenarians so these are people that not just lived to 100, like they're not just sitting there strapped to a chair. I mean, these sons of bitches are like out there playing tennis and fishing and like they're doing things at 100. I think the oldest lady was like 114. But one of the things that was undeniable was their ties to the community. They had a really, really, every single one of them had literally ties to, it was like multi-generational. It's so specifically there's two villages. One, it's in Okinawa, which is down in Japan, and then one in Italy, kind of in the Mediterranean. And that's where they have this like concentration of centenarians. And again, it had to do with just the impact of you connected to that community. Because when you had an issue, like let's say you came up with cancer, it wasn't you dealing with it alone. You had an entire village that was behind you going, dude, we're going to beat this. We're going to beat this. You're not in a room by yourself in the dark going, fuck, I got colon cancer. I'm fucked, And then the last thing I'll say is, again, from that book, Outlive, which, again, I highly recommend to everybody. It will change the way you look at fitness, longevity, your health, the way you sleep. Everything. There's real data. I mean, like real anecdotal data in here where like they break down, meta-analysis and all this other crap, like 20-pound brains. And Peter does a really good job dumbing it down for people like me. The other one is he was basically talking about, one of the therapists, this guy named Terry, and he was basically saying that like the reason it's important, if you're listening to this podcast and you're dealing with some sort of trauma, like mental health issue, and you can't find a purpose to turn the issue around. Here's a reason. And I'm just going to read directly from the quote. He said, Terry wrote this thing where he says, family pathology rolls from generation to generation like a wildfire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in a generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. Mm-hmm. Right. So they're basically just saying like that trauma that, maybe your grandfather, like maybe he was a raging alcoholic, passed it on to your father, then maybe that your father passed it on to you. Well, it's your turn to either fucking continue the status quo or find the courage, find the help, find whatever to not pass it on to your kids, to not pass it on to, and believe it or not, 20 generations down the road, they might be talking about you like, dude, thank God for my great, 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 great grandparents or grandfather, grandmother who decided to like say no to whatever the thing is that you're trying to overcome. So it's not just for you, it's for the generations ahead of you, because this will go down the road. Like there's no way it's going to stop with you unless you do something about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, don't be the status quo. Get uncomfortable. Make a change. You don't want to be that person then responsible. I always tell my guys at work or whatever, just upholding the standard. It's very high and it's very hard to hold that bar up so damn high for whatever. Don't let it be your generation that lets it fall. Don't do it, because it's not about you. It's about everybody that's gone before you to make this world the way it is for us, whether it's your family, your friends, your teammates, whatever, right? They've put in so much work for you to do it. You owe it to them, you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to the present people in your life that really truly love you and care for you. Like, you are worth it. You do matter. And You know, I
Shit,
just
reach us if you're having a hard time. Literally, shoot us a message.
yeah.
You know?
Feel free.
Yeah.
We've already had multiple people reach out, active duty and veterans, and even non-people that are just, hey, I'm not military or anything, but I listen to your podcast and this really resonated with me, and thank you so much. And like, how can I go about this way? Please do it. Like that's why we're here. And you know what? If we don't have the answer, we have great people that are great references and that we can get you counseling.
Yeah.
I know some at work. We have Dr. Erin, like she's a counselor. She's already been referred multiple people from the podcast that she's working with currently, which is just awesome. So if you're listening, great job on you for asking for help. She's an amazing freaking doctor, amazing person. Samir, you're a lucky son of a bitch. And
I hate Samir so much.
but
Just kidding, man. I love you, brother. You're one of the best, actually. You're great.
We love you, dude.
Yeah, they're a great couple, to be honest. They're just great people, man.
They're a power couple, 100%.
Yeah.
But if you're not tracking for active duty or for veterans out there, you can now dial 988, which is the veteran suicide hotline, and it will go and direct you straight to mental health, and they will do it. I have called it before to help other people and given them their information and coordinate to get them scheduling for counseling, for appointments at the VA, and to get these people legitimate help in their worst, darkest moment. It is a real thing. It is not a Hollywood thing. It is not something that's on the news. It is not a made up thing. It is not a political thing. It's a human thing. And we need to take care of each other and make sure that we practice humility, empathy, and sympathy for one another as human beings and get each other the help that we need. Because if we're not, then what the hell are we doing in our life? So if you have any questions, comments, or anything, please leave them below on the show, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, whatever. We'd love to hear from you all the time. And we look forward to hearing from you next episode. Hopefully Melon's back and he's out of the farter, and I don't know what he's doing, but hopefully he's back. It'll probably be Melon next week and Raf will be gone. That's how it's been going. I'm talking about consistency. It's affecting my mental health when I have to look at different people every damn week, and we can't just be a team, but I'll get over it. So until next week, take care, and we'll see you then.